I want you to do something for a second. Obviously, if you're driving or operating heavy machinery, keep your eyes on the world around you.
Right. Please don't close your eyes if you're driving.
Exactly. But otherwise, I want you to close your eyes and just think about what actually happens inside your head when you try to picture an apple. Just a simple red apple sitting on a table.
It sounds like the most elementary request a person could make, honestly.
Right. But what are you actually experiencing in this exact moment? Like, are you seeing a vivid, high-definition 3D model? Can you see the light reflecting off the wax on the skin of the apple?
Or is it more like a blurry, translucent sketch that just kind of keeps fading in and out?
Yeah, or is it just a completely blank screen, like pitch black, and you are simply contemplating the concept of an apple without actually seeing a single thing?
We operate under this massive unspoken assumption that everyone has the exact same internal operating system.
We really do.
We just assume that when we say, picture this, the person sitting next to us is executing the exact same mental gymnastics that we are. But the truth is, the internal landscape of the human mind is wildly diverse. The machinery rendering our thoughts is just different from brain to brain.
And that hidden diversity, the literal physics of our internal universes, is exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a profoundly fascinating set of source material to go through.
We really do.
It's a transcript of a conversation, it's unassuming, it's pretty brief, and it's simply titled The Imagination as a Guide Through the Dark.
And what makes it so striking is that this isn't a transcript from like a neuroscience symposium or some academic philosophy panel.
No, it is a recorded conversation between a high school student named Lisa and an older man. And our mission for this deep dive is to use their dialogue to explore the mechanics of how we humans use our internal worlds to navigate the unknown. We are going to look under the hood at the stark differences in how we process reality, how we map space, and how we handle the metaphorical dark when the external world just, drops away.
Because as you read through this transcript, you quickly realize that the tools we rely on when the lights go out are completely unique to our own neurobiology.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because we usually treat the imagination like a playground. It's where we go to daydream about quitting our jobs or winning the lottery or figuring out what we would do if a bear suddenly kicked the door down.
Right, the classic shower thoughts.
Exactly. We view it as playtime. But what if we completely reevaluated the imagination not as a playground, but as a critical evolutionary survival tool?
That pivot is the exact threshold this conversation crosses. To really understand imagination as a navigational tool, we have to look at how their dialogue actually kicks off.
Yeah.
It begins with a literal picture on a page and a fundamental disagreement over a single sentence.
Yes, so the older man shows Lisa a picture, and this picture has a title printed on it. It says, "Do I trust myself to navigate the dark?"
Right.
And down at the bottom corner of the page, there is a sentence that has been highlighted. The phrase mentions the concept of, quote, getting lost in your imagination.
And Lisa, this high school student, takes one look at that wording and immediately rejects the premise.
She completely pushes back on it. She tells the older man that she zeroed in on that specific sentence because she fundamentally disagrees that the imagination is just a place we get lost in.
Wow.
She argues that the imagination is in fact a guide. She points out that when you are in the dark, when the lights are off, there is nothing tangible for you to trust anymore. All you have left is yourself, your residual senses, and your imagination.
She is tapping into a massive cognitive concept here without even using the scientific jargon for it.
What do you mean?
Well, she's describing the brain's transition from relying on bottom-up external data to relying on top-down internal data. When the sensory inputs are flowing when the lights are on, your brain is mostly just processing what is right in front of you.
Sure, taking in the room.
Exactly. But when that data stream is severed, the brain has to generate its own map.
Which is such a brilliant paradigm shift. Society treats the imagination like a VR headset.
Yeah.
You strap it on when you want to tune out the real world and look at something else. It's pure escapism. But Lisa is framing the imagination like a flashlight or like a compass.
A tool.
Right. It is the exact tool you turn on when you need to find your way through the real world when the external data goes missing. But I do have to push back a little on Lisa's premise here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If the dark represents the unknown or a total lack of sensory input, isn't trusting something entirely made up in our heads incredibly risky?
Risky how?
Like, if I'm literally lost in the woods at night, trusting my imagination feels like a great way to walk right off a cliff because I imagined a footbridge that just doesn't exist.
Well, the brain isn't just randomly hallucinating a bridge for fun. It's engaged in what neuroscientists call predictive processing.
Predictive processing. Okay.
Yeah, what Lisa is realizing and articulating quite beautifully, honestly, is that when external tangibility disappears, your internal navigational system is the only mechanism you have to predict what happens next.
Oh, I see.
She isn't suggesting we invent a fantasy world to ignore the cliff. She's pointing out that human beings handle uncertainty by using the imagination to simulate possibilities based on whatever sparse sensory data we do have left.
Like the sound of a river or something.
Exactly. Your brain runs a physics simulation. It imagines the slope of the ground, the sound of the wind, the memory of the trail. It's not a hallucination to escape reality. It is a rapid-fire probabilistic projection designed to help you survive it.
And the older man must have recognized the intellectual weight of what she was saying because he doesn't just nod and move to the next topic. He immediately calls her bluff.
He really does.
He takes this philosophical theory she just laid out and forces it into a practical test right there in the room.
He challenges her to an experiment. He asks Lisa to simply close her eyes and sit in silence for 10 seconds.
Just 10 seconds.
Yeah. He wants her to purposely plunge herself into the dark, think about something, imagine it, and then report back on what her internal machinery actually did.
So she closes her eyes, the 10 seconds tick by, she opens them, and she explains exactly what happened. During those 10 seconds of literal visual darkness, she heard a sound coming from outside. She heard her mom talking to her dog, and she used that real-time audio cue to vividly paint a picture in her mind.
She didn't have to force it.
No. She tells the older man that it wasn't difficult at all to imagine her mom and her dog, and she specifically visualized them existing inside the living room.
Because the human mind absolutely hates a sensory vacuum.
Oh, completely. It rushes to fill the void. She didn't invent a dragon or a spaceship. She visualized her immediate mundane reality. But wait, is she actually navigating here?
What do you mean?
Because if she only pictures the dog after she hears it barking, her imagination isn't really acting as a guide, is it? It just seems like it's acting as an echo, like it's just a visual translator for what her ears already figured out.
It's not just an echo, though. It's doing something much more computationally heavy called cross-modal processing.
Cross-modal.
Yeah, you're right that the audio triggered it, but think about how the brain constructs that image. When the visual sense is abruptly shut off, the visual cortex doesn't just go to sleep.
Right.
It actively recruits the auditory cortex. It grabs that sonic clue, the muffled pitch of the mom's voice, the specific direction of the dog's bark, and the visual cortex uses that sound to mathematically render the dimensions of the physical space. It places them in the living room.
So it's triangulating.
Exactly. It's giving her a spatial, geometric model of where things are in relation to her own body.
Yeah.
That proves her point perfectly.
Wow.
The senses and the imagination are working in a highly sophisticated tandem. Even with her eyes closed, she knows where she is, she knows where her family is, and she understands the architecture of her environment. Strictly because her imagination mapped the sound waves into a visual blueprint.
That makes total sense. Like the microphone picks up the raw audio, but the imagination is the software rendering the 3D environment so the user can actually understand it.
Precisely. But while Lisa's visualization of her mom and dog perfectly illustrates how her brain maps the outside world, she casually drops a secondary detail about her 10-second experiment that completely shifts our understanding of her internal world.
Yes. The part that actually stopped me in my tracks, though, here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, this part is wild.
Because before she even imagined the dog and her mom, she tells the older man that right after she closed her eyes, she actually thought about herself closing her eyes.
The older man pauses on this, because when you really isolate that action, it's a staggering cognitive detail.
It really is.
He clarifies it with her. He essentially says, wait, you actually had to imagine yourself closing your eyes in order to do the thing you were supposed to do.
And she confirms it. She says yes. Although she couldn't physically see herself doing it, she had to imagine herself performing the action.
It is a total metacognitive loop.
It is completely bizarre to think about. It's like she has a tiny movie director living inside her head. She was given a physical command by the older man, close her eyes.
Right.
But to execute that command, her brain had to generate a third-person visual avatar of herself, like a director stepping in front of the camera, looking back at the lead actor and yelling, "Action!"
That's a great analogy.
Why on earth does the human brain need to render a visual representation of itself just to execute a basic first-person physical command?
It dives right into the deepest nuances of selfhood and motor control. What Lisa is experiencing is a very profound form of motor imagery.
Motor image.
Yeah, for many people, intention and physical action aren't just connected by a simple mechanical switch. You often have to visualize an action in the abstract before the motor cortex can fully embody it. Think about Olympic high jumpers or gymnasts.
Oh, right. You always see them standing on the track with their eyes closed, sort of twitching their shoulders, mapping out the jump before they actually run.
Exactly. They are mentally rehearsing the biomechanics. They are firing the exact same neural pathways in the brain that will be used for the physical jump, just without sending the final signal to the muscles.
So Lisa is doing a micro version of that.
Yes. Her brain needed to see the blueprint of the action before the body could build it. It shows that her imagination is so deeply intertwined with her sense of physical agency that she uses visual imagery to author her own movements.
Wow.
She is quite literally guiding herself into the dark by visualizing her avatar entering it first.
That is wild. Her internal world is this vibrant, multi-layered visual theater where she is simultaneously the audience, the director, and the star.
Beautifully put.
But the climax of this entire transcript happens when the older man responds to her experience, because his internal world operates on a completely different set of physics, and it forces us to reevaluate this entire concept of what it means to navigate.
Right. The older man listens to this rich visual tapestry Lisa has just spun. The rendered living room, the dog, the mom, the third-person avatar of herself, and then he reveals his own baseline experience.
He tells her, and I'm paraphrasing the transcript here, well, I can't really imagine anything when I close my eyes. When I close my eyes, it's all dark. There are really no images.
Total darkness, a complete blank canvas.
Yeah.
What he is describing actually has a clinical name. It's called aphantasia.
Aphantasia.
Yes. It's a condition where a person is entirely unable to voluntarily create mental images in their mind's eye.
And the only exception he notes is that during certain states of dreaming, he can see an image. But in his conscious waking life, when he closes his eyes and tries to imagine an apple or a living room or a dog, well, there is nothing visual happening at all. So what does this all mean for his ability to navigate? We just spent this whole time establishing Lisa's theory that the imagination is a visual flashlight.
Right.
If the older man literally sees only pitch black, how does he survive the dark?
It completely shatters our assumption that imagining has to mean seeing pictures.
Totally.
If Lisa's imagination is a high-definition television broadcasting a 3D map, the older man's imagination is more like a raw data stream.
Oh, I like that. It's like he has the code of the matrix, but he doesn't have the computer monitor to display it. He's operating purely on a non-visual frequency.
That's a great way to put it. The data's all there. People with aphantasia still have spatial awareness.
They don't bump into walls.
Exactly. They still have semantic memory, meaning they know the facts of what a dog looks like, they know the spatial layout of their living room, and they know the concepts of their environment.
Interesting.
They rely on spatial grids in the brain, specifically place cells and grid cells in the hippocampus, which can map an environment mathematically without needing to project a picture of it.
And the most fascinating contradiction here is that the older man's brain is biologically capable of generating pictures. We know this for a fact because he explicitly states that he can see images when he's dreaming.
Exactly. The hardware works.
Yeah.
The projector bulb isn't broken.
The projector is fully functional, but his conscious waking mind simply lacks the bridge to access it. When he is awake, the command center cannot manually pull up the visual files. The pathway for voluntary visualization is severed, even though the involuntary visualization of dreams works perfectly.
Which is such a hard bias for highly visual people to break. The word image is literally the root of the word imagination.
Oh, right.
But the older man is living proof that you can have a rich imagination, you can have an internal guide, and you can map the unknown without a single picture.
That's incredible.
He still thinks, he still remembers, he still navigates, he just does it strictly in the dark.
When you put Lisa's vivid, hypervisual world right next to the older man's completely blank canvas, you realize what a beautiful contrast this is. Lisa uses her imagination to actively fill the darkness with light, shape, and form. Her brain constructs avatars and living rooms. The older man uses his imagination to understand the darkness exactly as it is. He navigates by conceptual radar rather than visual rendering.
Neither system is broken.
Yeah.
They're just entirely different evolutionary solutions to the exact same problem.
And that is the true heart of this source material. It's not just a semantic debate over a highlighted sentence in a book.
No, it's much bigger than that.
It is a profound revelation about human neurodiversity. We have Lisa's viewpoint, proving that imagination can be a vital sensory-linked engine that utilizes cross-modal processing to build physical spaces and prime the motor cortex.
Right, the flashlight.
And we contrast that with the older man's literal darkness, a mind that thinks, processes, and guides without the need for a single waking image. Two people can sit in the exact same room, have the exact same conversation, and yet exist in internal universes that obey entirely different laws of physics.
And this all culminates in the older man's final sign-off to Lisa.
Yeah.
After she shares her vibrant visual world, he thanks her for the perspective, and he says something incredibly poignant. He tells her that her imagination can be her guide into tomorrow.
Which is just a gorgeous poetic phrase, a guide into tomorrow. And looking closely at that phrase actually leaves us with a lingering question, something that isn't explicitly stated in the transcript, but that feels like the ultimate philosophical conclusion of everything we've talked about today.
Oh, definitely. Where does that phrase take you?
Well, think about the concept of tomorrow. Tomorrow is the ultimate dark space, isn't it? It hasn't happened yet.
Right.
It doesn't exist. None of us can actually see it. We are all, collectively, walking into the dark of the future every single day.
That's very true. Psychologists actually call it episodic future thinking, our ability to project ourselves forward in time.
Right. So if our internal flashlights are all wired as differently as Lisa's and the older man's, how does that affect the way we experience the future?
Think about anxiety.
Exactly. If you have a hyper-visual imagination like Lisa and you are worried about a job interview tomorrow, your brain is probably rendering a high-definition movie of you failing.
Seeing the disappointed looks on their faces.
You are! Your body is physically reacting to a visual simulation of a threat that hasn't even happened. You are essentially living through the stress of tomorrow, today.
But if you have aphantasia, like the older man,
Yes. If your mind is a blank canvas, you might still feel anxious about the concept of the interview, but you aren't being forced to watch a traumatic 3D movie of it playing on loop on the back of your eyelids.
your conceptual radar knows the threat is there, but your visual cortex isn't torturing you with the details.
It raises such a fascinating point about how we experience reality. If some of us are projecting high-definition 3D maps of the future, and some of us are navigating entirely by invisible conceptual radar, are we all fundamentally walking toward entirely different versions of reality simply because of how our brains render the unseen?
That is a staggering thought to end on.
The next time you close your eyes to imagine an apple or a memory or tomorrow, pay attention to the dark. Figure out how your specific machinery works. You might just be surprised by what is actually guiding you through it.